I'm Michael Cross with the KOSU Daily on this Tuesday, July 12th, 2022. I'll have that, plus new turnpikes move a step closer to reality. Controversial Access Oklahoma Turnpike projects move a step closer to implementation following approval from the Transportation Commission. State Impact's Beth Wallace reports.
Early Monday morning, the anti-turnpike group PIKE OETA demonstrated outside of the Department of Transportation building as closed-door subcommittee meetings went on inside.
What are they doing in there that they don't want the citizens of Oklahoma to see?
At the public meeting later that morning, the Oklahoma Transportation Commission voted to approve 3 proposed turnpike routes in central Oklahoma currently under litigation. But the vote wasn't unanimous. This is District 2 Commissioner James Grimsley.
I don't think it's a tenable future where we continue to build highways with no really limit on that, because we're running into $50 to $60 million a mile. That's not sustainable.
The vote happened without a commissioner representing District 3, where much of the controversial routes are located. The OTA is currently waiting on the Oklahoma Supreme Court to review the validity of these routes. For State Impact, I'm Beth Wallace.
And Norman residents continue to battle for their homes as litigation issues continue against the OTA. I spoke with a member of PIKE OETA and his direct connection to the issue. This quiet, calming area is set to be the future home of a loud, busy highway. The new turnpike would destroy many homes, but Norman residents are not backing down without a fight.
We are working to fight the turnpike process.
Randy Carter has lived on his property for decades, but the turnpike threatens his long-standing home.
On where the turnpike for the southern extension going through Cleveland County, city of Norman, runs right through my living room right here.
Carter has lived on this property for 40+ years. He's built every square foot by hand. If the turnpike is constructed, where I'm standing now will be the heart of the highway.
With my own hands, I dug every footing, poured all the concrete, plumbed every pipe, ran every wire, painted every wall in that house.
Randy joined PIKE OETA from its birth. Now the organization is focusing on an upcoming election to help combat the OTA.
In trying to help get the vote out for the upcoming election,
Randy wants Oklahomans to know they could be next to lose their homes.
Your property just as well as it's trying to take mine right now. So it would behoove citizens of Oklahoma to become aware of what this Turnpike Authority has the potential to do, and to help us stop them now before they come and create this Category 5 devastation all over the state.
And the OTA and PIKE OETA will be discussing studies concerning the potential new turnpike at the Capitol tomorrow at 9.
A local doctor requests open records from the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority and says the records she was given show the authority is planning to increase toll rates substantially. Dr. Amy Serrato says the OTA gave her a chart outlining plans to increase toll prices by 10% next year, followed by a 6% increase every other year. News 9 reaching out to the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority for comment. The agency tells us it cannot confirm nor deny this information at this time.
In other news, will it soon cost you a lot more to travel one of Oklahoma's busiest toll roads?
Well, the Turnpike Authority, they've drawn up a chart showing what drivers could be paying over the next 25 years to travel on the Turner Turnpike. And News 4's Kaylee Olivas has been looking into that for us. Kaylee.
Yeah, well, Jolene, that chart suggests that by 2046, it could cost Oklahoma drivers nearly $10 just to drive over the Turner Turnpike between Oklahoma City and Tulsa. But the Turnpike Authority stresses this projection isn't a done deal.
When OTA started thinking about how do we finance a long-range plan to not only reinvest into the turnpike system, but also expand it so we don't have gridlock in year 2050.
The Turnpike Authority says this chart shows what I-35 from Purcell to Oklahoma City will be like if no more toll roads are built. They add it could cause a shockwave in traffic delays 25 years from now.
They're using fear and false data to justify an unnecessary transportation corridor that will destroy East Norman.
We had to think about how we can get those funds, what it will cost us. So we had to make many assumptions.
Assumptions that led the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority to this chart. It shows the possibility of a 30 to 35 cent rate increase every other year starting in 2025. By 2046, it shows drivers could pay $9.40 just to take the Turner Turnpike between Oklahoma City and Tulsa. Turnpike expansion opponents say the possible toll hikes could be avoided altogether if the Turnpike Authority would abandon some projects, like the proposed turnpike through East Norman.
They don't need to do that if they don't build this $5 billion boondoggle through Cleveland County. They can continue as is and maintain the roadways they already have and let the communities decide whether or not they need a roadway.
But the Turnpike Authority says they haven't signed off on this just yet.
We have no plans at the moment to increase any of the tolls on our turnpike system. At some point in time, we will have to increase the tolls. But we are one of the lowest, we're 60% actually lower nationwide for our toll rates.
We have requested the other turnpike toll predictions within the state of Oklahoma, but haven't received them yet. As soon as we do, we'll be sure to share them with you on KFOR.com.
Lawmakers and opponents were at the Capitol today as the Senate weighed the need for more oversight to the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. Ashley Moss is joining us now with the latest update. Ashley?
That's right, Kevin. One woman I spoke to today at the hearing told me her home is right in the path of construction for future turnpikes and that it feels like the OTA is trying to build what they want, where they want, when they want.
My husband actually started this business with his family, just had a vision that they'd be able to work together and produce something that would be good for our community and our environment.
We'd hoped to visit Darla on this scenic 2-acre property she shares with her husband and kids. But instead, we met her here at the Capitol, fighting for her piece of paradise, which lies in the direct path of the proposed south extension near Lake Thunderbird. She could lose it all if the current turnpike plan moves forward.
I grew up in Norman. I graduated from Norman High. I married my high school sweetheart, and it's a terrible way to live. I still feel guilty, like I should have somehow planned for this, but you don't ever plan for your government to come and destroy your house.
And we've got a long history of successful property acquisition and working very closely and very carefully with property owners.
She and others gathered at the Capitol calling for more in-depth research and consideration, also saying transportation officials are dodging legislative oversight.
With the traffic modeling, the poor feeder route design, the lack of any sort of OTA knowledge of the greater transportation landscape.
Darla says she takes time off for these kinds of days to make sure her voice is heard, because if there's a forced exodus out of Norman to make way for the turnpikes, her family may have to go too.
I don't think that we could replicate that elsewhere.
Now, Darla is part of the grassroots group PIKE OTA, and I checked in with one of those organizers tonight who told me they were focused on today's presentations, but next they'll focus on getting some of that proposed legislation that they were talking about today in motion.
Evan, it's a new battle between the Turnpike Authority and PIKE OTA, and it all stems down to this. Does there need to be legislation to keep OTA accountable, or are they acting within their authority?
The state Senate's Transportation Committee heard from OTA today about how they operate and about the Access Oklahoma plan to build new turnpikes in the state. But OTA's opponents argue the turnpike plan isn't only unauthorized in Cleveland County, but throughout the state. The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority took the stand first, claiming what they do is in statute and necessary. They addressed major concerns for the Access Oklahoma plan, including studies and how many homes will be impacted.
Looking at some of the topographical survey that we've been able to do to date, we think that number is going to be closer to 200 to 250.
Those opposed to the turnpike also talked to the committee, discussing their multiple legal challenges, plus what they call historical faults of OTA. They say the lack of public input, engineering research, financial practices, and taking property are major concerns of theirs.
So right now they're required to do no justification studies. They're required to do no engineering impact studies, no environmental studies.
Now they're asking for legislation to help pull back power and keep the Turnpike Authority accountable.
So putting those practices in place that are in almost every single other state's statutes, that anybody that's building a roadway or doing any kind of roadway work has to do these studies prior to construction starting.
and this process is in the beginning stages. So now the Senate committee will take what they heard from both sides today and determine if they feel creating a legislative task force is necessary.
The battle over new turnpikes in Cleveland County could be decided now at the state capitol. Today, a Norman-based group pleaded with lawmakers to put more guardrails on the State Turnpike Authority. Barry Mangold joins us live at the Capitol with more on the story. Barry?
Yeah, Amanda, here in the newsroom, and there are multiple ongoing lawsuits over the OTA's plan to build new turnpikes in Cleveland County, as well as a pending decision from the state Supreme Court. Now, the group PIKE off OTA is making the argument to state lawmakers that the Turnpike Authority needs to be reined in.
Right now, the OTA is trying to build turnpikes it claims were authorized 35 and 29 years ago.
It's time for the legislators on behalf of your constituents to grab that power back from the OTA.
For more than 3 hours on Tuesday, opposers of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority argued that the agency has too much power.
They're not asking the public, do you want these routes or are they a good idea? They're not asking local governments, do you want these routes or are they the good idea? They're telling them this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to take your property.
The OTA is planning multiple new turnpikes in Cleveland County. Those plans blindsided local officials.
We did not seek input from the Norman City Council to determine routes. That's not the role that the local government plays.
Although the city of Norman has formally opposed the new turnpikes, Transportation Secretary Tim Gatz says the OTA is trying to help several counties in central Oklahoma.
Canadian, Oklahoma, Grady, Cleveland, McLean, all of those are going to rank in the top 12 or 14 counties in the state for growth. And I think everything that we do is anticipating what we see happening.
And Norman Senator and Transportation Committee Chair Rob Standridge led today's interim study. He declined to comment immediately after the meeting. The legislative session, though, starts in February. Barry Mangold, Oklahoma Zone, News 9.
Now to a Fox 23 investigation we've been telling you about for months. People who live in the Berry Hill area are upset that a section of road that's been free will now cost them. We're talking about the new Gilcrease Expressway extension in West Tulsa. Fox 23's Spencer Humphrey has been working to get answers. With the road set to open soon, he looks into why people there are not backing down.
Ever since Frank Mason has lived there.
We moved over here in 1968.
He's always heard about the plan to build the Gilcrease Expressway through Berry Hill as a freeway.
We did not want a turnpike through here.
But plans change.
There are no free roads in Oklahoma.
And as construction nears the finish line, driving the road will come at a cost.
What we want to do, we want to be treated fairly.
Since the early 60s, the plan was to have a public entity like the city of Tulsa, Tulsa County, or ODOT to use your tax dollars to build the 5-mile section of the expressway heading west from I-44 connecting to Highway 412.
The centerpiece of the project, this massive multi-million-dollar bridge over the Arkansas River.
And it's that bridge that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority's Deputy Director Joey Kelly tells me caused plans to change and instead make it a toll bridge.
When it was announced in 2015, it was just going to be the bridge.
But there was a problem. If OTA built a toll bridge, it needed to connect to the major highways.
So we started talking about, who was going to build the rest of it and how would that get done, who would put in the additional money.
Kelly says OTA met with various local and state agencies and all said they couldn't afford to pay for it. In 2018, OTA announced it would build the rest of the expressway and open it as a turnpike. Construction started in 2020, but this past March, when neighbors like Melissa Myers saw toll scanners go up on a certain section of the road,
that was the very last thing they did.
She and countless others were confused.
We were like, what's happening?
Confused because that section from I-44 to 41st Street has been open there for decades as a free-to-use, taxpayer-funded, 2-lane portion of the future expressway.
So that section that was built in the past was a temporary connection.
That's not what they said. That is not what we've been told. and then here it is.
Melissa says they assumed tolls would only be added to those new sections. Kelly admits OTA did not initially tell the public where the toll scanners would be located. There was even an opportunity at a town hall attended by hundreds in February 2018.
In that presentation that we gave in 2018, we were still analyzing exactly where those locations were going to be.
I looked through public meeting records. The only mentions of toll scanner locations I could find that were presented were at meetings between the 5 agencies involved, one in November 2018 and the other in May 2019. Though open to the public, people rarely attend them.
That's the problem, is no transparency and no upfront of what's going on.
Fox 23 was there in April as hundreds of people voiced their frustrations at a community forum.
The main goal that we have is to eliminate the 51st to 41st.
They say having to pay a toll to get to 41st Street means they'll lose their only adequate and safe free access to their community, instead being forced to take side roads.
There's no lighting, there's no shoulders, there's no ditches.
OTA leaders tell me they did drivers a favor by not tolling you until after the 51st Street exit.
Just about as close to that exit as you can get. This Amazon warehouse that as of the day we are recording this is sitting totally empty and unused.
They're not going to ever have to pay unless they're having to go make a delivery, so they get to go to their work for free and travel.
I asked OTA, why not drop the toll between 51st and 41st and just make the rest of the tolls on the road a bit higher?
This particular segment, in order for this road to be here, this is how it had to be done.
He tells me the OTA got what's called a TIFIA loan from the federal government that required that section to be tolled. But people like Melissa and Frank want to know why they weren't told before that loan was taken out.
All the decisions were being made behind the scenes, a lot of them without our input.
Now state leaders have questions too. On September 7th, a state representative and state senator who both represent Berry Hill sent this letter to the Attorney General. In it, they explained the concerns and asked the AG to issue an opinion on if it's, quote, legal for an Oklahoma community's safest, most convenient, and free access road to be converted to a toll road. They also ask if there's anything that would prevent OTA from giving people who live in the area a special PIKE pass to make that stretch free for them.
The state representative told me so far the AG hasn't responded. I asked the city of Tulsa and Tulsa County for interviews about this project. The city said no. I thought I was going to interview County Commissioner Karen Keith. She's been heavily involved with this project, but an hour before I was set to talk to her, I received a voicemail from a then Assistant Tulsa County District Attorney.
I'm calling in to let you know that the interview you have scheduled with Commissioner Keith this morning is canceled, and I'm not really sure what that would do to help you.
I also submitted an open records request about 2 months ago to the city and county. I am still waiting to get those records. I will keep working to find out more about this, and I will let you know when I receive those records. Covering news that matters, Spencer Humphrey, Fox 23 News.
Norman homeowners take their fight to keep turnpikes out of their backyard to the Supreme Court.
I cycle through all the phases of grief all day, every day. Like, some days I'm really angry, some days I'm really sad. Today I'm more angry.
Next on the Oklahoma News Report.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Oklahoma News Report. I'm Jason Doyle. Richlands will return next week. Property owners around Norman vowed to fight to the end to stop a turnpike expansion effort they say will not only take their homes, but hundreds of others. Those property owners are embroiled in lawsuits against the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, a dispute that extends all the way to the state Supreme Court. Steve Shaw is here to tell us more. Steve?
Jason, in February, the state and the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, or OTA, unveiled what they call Access Oklahoma. It's a turnpike expansion plan that would spend $5 billion over the next 15 years to widen existing turnpikes and to create new routes. The governor and other state leaders call it a bold plan that's needed. Critics call it something else.
Randy Carter has lived about a mile west of Lake Thunderbird for more than 4 decades. He says when the state announced plans to build a South Turnpike expansion, it didn't take him long to figure out that red line just to the left of Lake Thunderbird on the map, heading south, goes right over him.
The south extension is going to go right through my living room. I will lose my whole home and all the property, and also the home I built next door as well. I've lived on this corner since probably 1979, and I guess I'm just a little bit attached to it.
Carter is part of a grassroots group that calls itself PIKE OTA. They're fighting the OTA's Access Oklahoma plan, both in district court and in state Supreme Court.
There was no communication, no citizen input whatsoever on where the turnpike would go, whether it's needed. Their engineering is faulty. They haven't done proper studies. They don't know the impact that it will have on the environment. They say they don't know how many homes it will take. Well, we were able to look at the line they've drawn and get on Google Maps, and our people have found that they're going to they're going to destroy over 600 homes.
Just south of Randy is University of Oklahoma anthropology professor Tassie Hirschfeld's home. Tassie and her husband Corson bought their land and built their home in 2005.
Did you know that this was coming?
No clue. And we were very just militant about due diligence before we bought the acreage. We met with the city, mapped all the abandoned wells, and just talked to 2 different attorneys. Nothing came up ever. It was never a remote possibility.
That a turnpike could be roaring through here.
Right. No indication, no hint. Again, we met with 2 attorneys, all the title work, everything. There was nothing.
Corson Hirschfeld died from a terminal illness 2 years ago.
I cycle through all the phases of grief all day, every day. Like, some days I'm really angry. Some days I'm really sad. Today I'm more angry. But it's just been this crushing, soul-crushing experience that I never could have anticipated. And the timing was just so horrendous. Coming out of a pandemic, I've basically been housebound for 2 years, lost my husband, and now they want to put a turnpike right here that will destroy the beauty of this property that I'm so attached to. Who does that?
Darla and Cedric LeBlanc's home, an exotic plant business they say also sits on that red line.
It's going to go straight through my living room. It would wipe out our acreage. We have 2.5 acres that we live on, so we wouldn't get to live here anymore. It would destroy our business and our family home.
One of the big reasons for at least some of this is the state says it will take pressure off of I-35. They just can't widen it anymore because of all of the development that's taken place over the past 3 or 4 decades. Joe E. Kelly is Deputy Director and Chief Engineer of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority.
And Oklahoma City and the metropolitan area is the 20th largest city in the nation and continues to grow today. We have to build additional roads to serve that population growth.
E. Kelly says it's never easy mapping out turnpike extensions, but they offer fair market value for properties they take.
No doubt, I feel for the folks. I know they didn't anticipate this. Both ODOT and OTA have a long history of working really, really hard to do the right thing when we're asking an Oklahoman, somebody that we live in and around. I mean, we're Oklahomans too. We're asking them to make a sacrifice for the betterment of the state.
The problem with fair market value is it's not the same thing as replacement value. To find a property like this many acres in a comparable situation, they're few and far between in the Norman city limits. It's likely to run a lot of people out of town.
Rob Norman is an Oklahoma City-based attorney who represents PIKE OTA.
The sacrifice is not being made for the betterment of the state, is what I would say. The sacrifice they're asking people to make is to give up their individual liberty and to give up their homes and their businesses for a set of turnpikes that are legally not authorized. In other words, the OTA's efforts here violate the rule of law, violate representative democracy principles, and they're also not necessary.
in this case, and with turnpikes and infrastructure like this, like an alternative route to I-35, this isn't just about Oklahoma. This is about interstate commerce and interstate travel to and from Texas, headed north and east, and headed from Arkansas that's trying to get down to Texas, any of those directions. We know that that we're asking people to make a sacrifice.
I have not been treated this badly by a government agency since I lived in Cuba in the 1990s. Like, that's the level of contempt that they have shown for us out here.
And the OTA and ODOT are moving down a path differently than they have moved down in the past. And this kind of gets into the politics of the deal. This time around, the OTA and the executive branch of Oklahoma's government are telling us what they're going to do. And too bad if we don't like it.
The OTA has been sued numerous times, and ODOT on new highway alignments, and to my knowledge, the Turnpike Authority has never lost.
Nobody's clear on how long this process will drag out in the courts. OTA Deputy Director E. Kelly says they've done environmental studies. Another thing that is significant, he said the soonest they would start construction on the south expansion is another 8 years.
An attorney submits what he's calling new evidence against the OTA to the Cleveland County District Court.
Richard Labarth gave the judge some documents claiming the OTA changed two public meeting agendas before announcing their Turnpike project. Fox 25's David Chazanoff met with the lawyer this afternoon. So, David, what did you find out?
Well, guys, these allegations are part of an ongoing lawsuit against the OTA that argues they violated the state's Open Meeting Act.
It just shows that something very peculiar that doesn't seem to make any sense.
According to the documents Labarth gave the Cleveland County District Court, the OTA made edits to their meeting agendas on January 25th and February 22nd.
We're not alleging at this point any fraudulent behavior by any means.
Labarth says computer data shows the OTA altered their January 25th agenda around February 13th.
All we know is that there were modifications, and we can't understand why in the world one would do that.
He also claims there's evidence the OTA modified their February 22nd meeting agenda a day after.
We've not offered any theories about why they may have done it or the scope and extent of any modifications. We don't know.
The OTA tells Fox 25 they updated those agendas to add signatures to them, proving those meetings happened.
Well, perhaps that's true. I don't know. They've never done so in any of their 2021 meetings, apparently.
The OTA says they, quote, vehemently refute spurious accusations, and any allegations of wrongdoing are both ill-informed and inflammatory.
We haven't set out to inflame anyone or anything. All we're doing is reporting factually, and everything we put in the motion and in the supplement is factual.
And the Cleveland County District Court says the OTA has until Wednesday to file a written response to the judge, who would then order a court hearing the following day. Now, we do have the OTA's full reaction to these allegations on our website. That's okcfox.com. Reporting live in Oklahoma City, David Chazanoff, Fox 25 News.
Attorneys are now accusing the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority of fraud and tampering with evidence.
It is the newest development to an Open Meeting Act lawsuit against the OTA. Fox 25's David Chazanoff has been learning more about these allegations. So, David, what did you find out?
Well, Dan and Wendy, I spoke with Richard Labarth, and he's once again accusing the OTA of changing their meeting agendas after announcing their Turnpike project.
It sure seems dubious, very questionable to us.
Last week, Labarth gave the Cleveland County District Court some documents showing the OTA modified their January 25th and February 22nd agenda after those meetings happened.
We believe it was completely improper to in any way alter these agendas.
The OTA tells Fox 25 they updated those agendas to add signatures to them.
The agendas should be left undisturbed because they are the evidence as to what notice was given to the public and that is at the heart of an Open Meeting Act case.
A new motion Labarth filed this morning claims the original January 25th agenda had just 5 pages. The modified version has 47.
The Turnpike Authority is trying to make the case that they should be entitled to have a whole lot of pages construed or considered to be part of their agenda.
Another illustration from Labarth's motion says the February 22nd agenda had 5 pages, which then became 52 after some edits.
We don't think that that's a proper way to construe what was put in these agendas, and that's their obligation as a public body.
The OTA tells Fox 25 the allegations of fraud and tampering with evidence are, quote, false, factually inaccurate, and will be proven to be completely without merit.
Well, I don't know. Last time they vehemently denied and said that we had made spurious allegations. I don't know. I guess we're going to find out if they're spurious or not. We believe everything we've put in these motions is 100% factual.
And Labarth says on Monday we should learn if the judge wants to hear from the 2 people who created those meeting agendas in January and February. And you could read the OTA's full response to these allegations on our website. That's okcfox.com. Reporting live in Oklahoma City, David Chazanoff, Fox 25 News.
Attorneys in Cleveland County are accusing the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority of altering public documents. It is all part of a lawsuit that aims to halt the OTA's plan to build new turnpikes in Cleveland County. Our Barry Mangold dug into the claims and has his findings.
A critical question posed by this lawsuit is, did the OTA describe the Access Oklahoma plan in public meetings before it was announced by the governor? Attorneys are now claiming the OTA altered the agendas of key meetings after they occurred. A group of more than 200 Cleveland County residents is asking a judge to upend the state's $5 billion plan to build new turnpikes.
It's a lawsuit over procedure rather than substance.
Attorney Richard Labarth says their focus is on the Turnpike Authority commission meetings in January and February, during which a nearly $5 million contract was awarded to an engineering firm for Access Oklahoma. If you go to the OTA website now, you'll see that the agendas for January and February 2022 are 47 and 52 pages each, and they include lots of information on Access Oklahoma. The lawsuit claims these were not the agendas that were available before the actual meetings. Archived versions of the OTA website, which you can find on archive.org, show that the same agendas just a few months ago were only 5 pages each.
So in total, it's close to 100 extra pages of matter that they have presented as if they were in the agenda that we contend were not.
Labarth claims this shows that the OTA violated the State Open Meeting Act and is asking a judge to undo the contracts awarded during those meetings, which would halt the Access Oklahoma plan.
The Turnpike Authority would not be precluded from starting over. They could do that, but this time around they would have to do so in a manner that would allow the public to know what they're proposing.
The OTA vehemently denies that the agendas were altered in any substantial way and calls the allegations false. This tees up a hearing in late November where both sides will make their arguments in front of a judge.
And Jess, the governor did answer some of their questions, but that doesn't mean they left happy.
I want to open it up to questions, comments.
Governor Kevin Stitt answered a variety of questions today, including those about turnpike plans in Cleveland County.
Have you spoken to anyone in East Norman about the turnpike expansion on the campaign trail?
Absolutely.
I was pretty surprised. He said, oh yeah, I've talked to somebody. I just wanted to go, who?
Can we move it? And that's the conversation we're having. Can we go a different route?
Protesters say their goal is to choose the candidate who will stop the proposed turnpike through Cleveland County. Governor Kevin Stitt wouldn't go that far, but said he wants to hear their concerns while also planning for the future of the state.
The studies are showing over the next 15, 20, 30 years, that's the best route to actually relieve traffic flow and to create, the quality of life that we all expect.
Residents against that turnpike have been pushing opponent Joy Hoffmeister for the same assurances.
I hope that she wants to stop it completely. I mean, who knows? I don't know.
She told KOCO in a statement that the turnpike is another example of Governor Stitt ignoring Oklahomans, but she didn't go as far as promising she would do anything different when it comes to this road. And those protesting those Turnpike plans say that they'll make their voices heard again Tuesday at the polls.
Discuss, if you would, please, sir, upholding the part of the Republican Party platform that says no more use of eminent domain to build more toll roads.
No more eminent domain.
Pages 20 and 21 of the Republican Party platform discuss no more turnpikes, and that also pledges no more use of eminent domain to build more toll roads.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, here's the deal. In our legislature back in the 90s has to lay out loops around Oklahoma City, Tulsa. The Turnpike Authority or Department of Transportation cannot do anything without the legislature's approval. So what's going to happen over the next 15 to 20 years? They're going to finish loops around Oklahoma City, Tulsa, 6-lane all the way up to Tulsa on the Turnpike. And that's just part of the infrastructure needs that our citizens have. We can't have gridlock on I-35. And so when they lay those loops out, they're in the engineering process. And again, these are 20-year type plans, 30-year type plans. The legislature laid that out back in the 90s, and we're going to work and make sure that it disrupts as little of people as possible, but also they're letting people know where development's going to go, right? Where the development's going to go. So if they can move anything, I think there's people obviously outside we all saw them protesting and that kind of thing, but that's just part of the infrastructure needs of a growing city and a growing state, staying ahead of the curve. We've got such an advantage in Oklahoma on work time, commutes, quality of life, versus Dallas-Fort Worth. We're absolutely promoting that in Oklahoma, and we want it to be as least disruptive as possible. But also, the other option is not gridlock on I-35 for the next 50 years either. So again, these are 30-year type plans that started back in the 90s, and as we see growth, we've got to do it.
New developments in a lawsuit against the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. A state transportation official claims she should not have to sit in for questioning amid allegations the OTA violated transparency laws. Our Barry Mangold is following the legal battle surrounding the Turnpike expansion and joins us now.
Yeah, Carl, the plaintiffs in this lawsuit want to subpoena several folks for questioning about the rollout of the Access Oklahoma plan. All of them have asked the judge to dismiss those subpoenas, including the Director of Strategic Communications for both ODOT and the OTA. A group of attorneys that have accused the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority of violating state transparency laws say getting folks to talk to them has been tough.
Everything that we've done in this case with discovery issues has been a struggle.
In a virtual court hearing Friday, companies, firms, and officials that have been subpoenaed argued they shouldn't have to sit for questioning. That includes the attorney for Jessica Brown, who said the paperwork wasn't served correctly.
They served that subpoena by leaving it with a coworker of hers at ODOT. They never served Jessica Brown.
Brown is the Director of Strategic Communications at the State Transportation Cabinet, which oversees the OTA, ODOT, and the State Aeronautics Commission. Her attorney argued that she's not related to the OTA's plan to build new turnpikes in Cleveland County.
The ODOT is a completely separate state agency from the OTA. ODOT's jurisdiction is not turnpikes.
5 months ago, Brown told News 9 that the rollout of the Access Oklahoma plan was transparent.
I'm not sure why anyone should have been surprised by it.
The plaintiffs in this case are arguing the opposite and are demanding Brown sit for questions.
This woman is at the heart of all this stuff. She is the dadgum Director of Strategic Communications.
The judge said he will decide whether to enforce or throw out the subpoenas very soon. Barry Mangold, Oklahoma's Own, News 9.
And new developments in a lawsuit against the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. In a virtual court hearing Friday, companies, firms, and officials that have been subpoenaed argued they shouldn't have to sit for questioning. That includes the attorney for Jessica Brown, who said the paperwork was not served correctly.
They served that subpoena by leaving it with a coworker of hers at ODOT. They never served Jessica Brown.
Now, Brown is the Director of Strategic Communications at the State Transportation Cabinet, which oversees the OTA and ODOT and the State Aeronautics Commission. And the plaintiffs in the case are arguing the opposite and are demanding Brown sit for questions. The judge tells News 9 he will decide whether to enforce or throw out the subpoenas soon.
There has been a round of briefs from the parties already. There's been argument in front of a referee already. And now the Supreme Court has asked for additional information
That request is related to two core issues in a case where $500 million in bonds is at stake for Turnpike expansion.
Initial legislative authorization for the South Extension, the East-West Connector, and the Tri-City Connector. They've asked for legal briefing from the parties on certain bonding and building restrictions.
Attorney Rob Norman says the upcoming hearing is a rare opportunity where the parties are actually doing oral arguments before the justices themselves.
Of giving all parties a fair chance for their day in court. Our contention is they won't be able to build the turnpikes if we prevail in the Supreme Court case.
It's not that we're anti-transportation or anti-development, but the process matters. People should not be able to take your home without following due process.
This plaintiff in the case said through her research, she now believes the turnpikes were never authorized by the legislature.
I am very confident that all the evidence supports our case. Their case consists of their attorneys saying we get to do whatever we want. We can put a turnpike wherever we want. Nobody has the right to impose any restrictions. And I think that rubs everybody in Oklahoma the wrong way.
Tonight into the turmoil surrounding a proposed turnpike expansion. The plan to add 3 extensions have been met with a lot of pushback, naturally, especially from the hundreds of families and business owners that can be forced from their property to make room for the new road. And now it seems like the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority might have expected the criticism.
Newly released information shows the OTA purchased more than 20 domain names just weeks before announcing the expansion. Most of those website addresses containing negative terms about the project. Ashley Moss explains.
You're probably saying domain names, what's the big deal? But this information is from an email presented in a deposition Wednesday for one of the Turnpike lawsuits. OTA presumably asking an outside PR firm to snag 23 domain names before potential opponents of the project could use them.
StopAccessOklahoma.com, StopAccess.com, NoAccessOklahoma.com, StopTheLoop.com. Snapping up all conceivable names that any opponent might want to try to use.
The message obtained by News 4 and dated February 7th shows a request from Oklahoma Transportation to an outside PR firm to purchase more than 20 domain names.
And we think that this is very strong evidence of the OTA's willfulness in executing their secret plan.
Turnpike opponents are calling this a bombshell of an email, saying it's clear evidence of the agency's attempt to suppress any public opposition to the Access Oklahoma project days before it was even announced.
K.com.
Tanner, a web developer and part of the PIKE OTA group, says it's not unusual to buy domains similar to your own.
But to sit out there and buy up your oppositions, it shows definite intent that they didn't want any kind of pushback on this project.
We contacted the OTA and have not heard back yet. However, in a statement to News 4 just last week, a representative from Oklahoma Transportation said, quote, "The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority is supportive of the court's process to ultimately provide clarity on the issue. However, the other side says it's just more evidence that the agency hasn't been upfront about its plans."
It will force OTA to go back and have those meetings over again and specifically lay out their plans.
Next week, we might get some answers as to what lies ahead for the project. On Monday, the judge assigned to the case is going to hear arguments from both sides on motions for summary judgment, and he could issue a ruling once that happens.
Another chapter unfolding in the battle about the Oklahoma Turnpike expansion plan.
Today, the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority squared off against a legal team representing hundreds of angry and worried property owners. This went on in Cleveland County courtroom.
News 4's Natalie Clydesdale was there, and she has the update.
Well, this afternoon, a legal team representing more than 200 property owners argued that the OTA violated the state's Open Meeting Act. Meanwhile, the OTA says that's not the case.
Well, today's a big deal.
The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority and more than 200 property owners continuing to clash over the proposed Access Oklahoma project.
Everybody in transportation in the whole country is watching what's happening in Oklahoma right now.
The $5 billion 15-year plan would add a new turnpike along Indian Hills Road, connecting Newcastle to Norman. The OTA also wants to extend the Kickapoo Turnpike west of Lake Thunderbird.
A lot of people have lived out there for a long time, and that's their vision of where they want to have their forever home.
The residents filed a lawsuit in May claiming the OTA violated the state's Open Meeting Act, arguing the agency failed to inform the public about the intended routes on the meeting agendas in January and February of this year.
They wanted to keep it under wraps. They made that very clear.
Adding the OTA, quote, played games with the agendas and that the items were, quote, materially obscure and deceptively worded. For example, item 884 from the January 25th meeting talks about finances for certain turnpike projects, but is not specific on what those projects were. On Monday, the Cleveland County judge heard arguments from both sides for about 3 hours. The lawyer representing the OTA, Philip Whaley, declined an interview, but a spokeswoman for the agency tells News 4 in part, as explained in our motion, we firmly believe there has been no violation of the Open Meeting Act, despite claims in numerous attempts to deflect from the Act's requirements by those opposing a turnpike in the Norman area. No decision was ultimately made on Monday. In Norman, Natalie Clydesdale, Oklahoma's News 4.
All right, Natalie, thank you. But the judge says the decision should be made by early next week. And of course, we'll keep you updated.
Did the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority violate the Open Meetings Act? It's a question a Cleveland County judge is still weighing tonight.
Both the OTA and its critics made their cases in court this afternoon. Fox 25's Tom Ferguson was in the courtroom. He joins us now live from OTA headquarters in Oklahoma City. So, Tom, what is this legal battle all about?
Dan and Wendy, the Norman residents suing the OTA say the authority hid plans about turnpike expansions in the state. They say this helped the OTA build support among politicians, but harmed homeowners by withholding information.
The willful deception, the intentionally misleading agendas, the concealing of all aspects of this program.
That was Tassie Hirschfeld, one of the Norman residents, saying the OTA wasn't upfront with Oklahomans with its plans to expand turnpikes and possibly seize residents' property to do it.
Oh, I'm so proud of our legal team. I thought they made the case succinctly, clearly, and with outstanding evidence.
The OTA's January 25th meeting is what's under a microscope. Critics say the authority took action on the Access Oklahoma Turnpike expansions without letting the public know what they were doing. The project's formal announcement came on February 22nd of this year.
I'm extremely hopeful. I'm very confident that the evidence is all on our side. And after hearing the questions the judge was asking, I'm confident that he's starting to recognize that fact.
According to attorney Stanley Ward, the authority did this on purpose.
Yeah, they wanted to keep it under wraps. They made that very clear because they planned this big rollout on February 22nd.
The OTA is pushing back against these claims. In a statement, the authority's spokeswoman said, quote, "We firmly believe there has been no violation of the Open Meetings Act. We look forward to the court's ruling on this matter." And the judge said he would release his decision early next week. He could rule in either side's favor or bring the issue to trial. Live in Oklahoma City, Tom Ferguson, Fox 25 News.
Happening today, the Oklahoma Supreme Court will hear arguments on the proposed turnpike bond authorization.
Hearing is set for 10 o'clock. The Supreme Court will hear arguments about moving forward with that $5 billion request to expand several turnpike routes. 2 pending cases are in district court opposing the Turnpike Authority request. We'll follow it for you. We'll be there today.
We are expecting to learn more about the future of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority's turnpike expansion plan at a hearing today. There's been a lot of controversy about this. The OTA is going before the state Supreme Court requesting permission to issue $500 million in bonds. A yes from the state Supreme Court would authorize all of the Access Oklahoma plan, which does include those new turnpikes, especially the ones down south. The hearing is at 10 o'clock this morning. We'll be there and let you know what happens.
Today, the state Supreme Court will decide the future of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority's Turnpike expansion plan. The OTA will request permission from the court to issue $500 million in bonds to help fund the project. The ruling will also consider the rest of the Access Oklahoma plan, which would reconstruct and widen more than 100 miles, in addition to adding 53 miles of new routes by 2037. That's expected to cost $5 billion. The hearing starts at 10 this morning.
The Supreme Court is responsible for both the validation of the routes and the bonds to build the roads. But opponents, specifically of the southern extension of the Turnpike through Cleveland County, say they're not legal.
The words of the statute don't come close to describing a northbound road from Purcell to Norman. They describe an eastbound road that starts in the vicinity of Tuttle and ends in the vicinity of Norman.
The argument was pretty clear that the state statute does not allow or authorize this route.
The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority says otherwise, arguing that former legislatures had written general descriptions of where the road can go, not specifics.
In the 72 years that the authority has been before this court, the court has never found that a route does not exist.
The second issue, the $500 million bond issuance for the Access Oklahoma projects. Previous legislation allowed OTA to build toll roads under one bond issuance. They say they fulfilled that and can now expand on that bond decades later. Others say that's not what the legislation says.
I think it's very clear in statute that it ended. So now they're going to have to persuade the court to buy in to their argument, which I think it really stretches common sense to get there. It was really hard intellectually to follow them all the way through.
Now the Supreme Court will make a decision on if those routes can be authorized and the bonds can be issued. Now this decision will be based on what was written in previous legislation and the arguments made from each side.
The Oklahoma Supreme Court heard oral arguments today in a challenge to the Turnpike Authority's application to issue bonds. Fox 25's Wayne Stafford is live outside the court right now. So Wayne, what will these hearings mean for the future of the South Extension Turnpike?
Well, Dan, it hangs in the balance as this would fund that project. Now, PIKE OTA is challenging the OTA's application for a bond revenue not to exceed $500 million. Also, in a rare move, this hearing was live streamed. Often cameras are not allowed in the courtroom. Monday's oral arguments hearing started with opening statements.
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court, validation of the petitioner's bonds by this court is proper for 3 reasons.
Words are important. They mean something. This is especially true in the law, especially when reviewing a piece of legislation.
Both sides argued which statutes, acts, and sections of which justified a new turnpike or against one.
The bonds to be issued will fund statutorily enumerated projects and refund outstanding indebtedness of the authority, as authorized by Sections 1705 and 1719 of its Enabling Act.
Section 1705E makes clear that OTA does not have the power to build or finance the so-called South Extension because the legislature has never authorized it.
And after about an hour and a half of questions from justices, the first hearing ended.
This has been case number 120619 that does stand submitted. We'll be in recess. All right.
Now, because of statewide interest in the Turnpike issue, there was limited seating in the courtroom, so we watched outside. When it was over, we talked to one of the attorneys for PIKE OTA.
This is going to impact people's lives forever. This is one of those cases where you have to get impassioned and you have to understand and have empathy with your clients.
Now, we did reach out to the OTA for an interview. They declined, but they sent us this statement saying, quote, the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority appreciates the Oklahoma Supreme Court taking the time to hear the authority's position in this case and allow OTA to answer specific questions from justices. We look forward to the court's ruling, which will provide clarity and finality to this issue. And this issue is not over. Of course, we'll continue to follow the story for the latest updates. Reporting, Wayne Stafford, Fox 25 News.
This is Oklahoma's own News 9.
The state Supreme Court mulling over the future of the controversial proposed Turnpike expansion. The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority requesting permission to use $500 million worth of bonds to help fund that project. Several groups are protesting the plan, claiming the OTA does not have authority to build the toll roads. The new turnpikes are one part of the OTA's Access Oklahoma plan. It's not yet clear when the court will make its decision. We'll, of course, be following it. The fate of whether the state can build 3 new turnpikes in the OKC Metro now rests with the state Supreme Court. Today, justices heard from the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority and also protesters making their voices heard. Our Barry Mangold is here with reaction from both sides tonight.
Carl, approval from the state Supreme Court will be vital for the OTA before they can move forward with designing 3 new turnpikes. However, some of the questions we heard from the justices gave protesters confidence as we wait for a decision.
Basically, the authorizations all provide for
The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority's plan to build 3 new toll roads in Oklahoma and Cleveland counties now in the hands of the Oklahoma Supreme Court.
I feel it went as well as it could have gone.
Attorney Rob Norman represents PIKE OTA, a group protesting the state project. He argued to the court that state lawmakers haven't authorized the new toll roads.
Their quest to build these 3 turnpikes is unlawful under the Turnpike Enabling Act.
Meanwhile, the OTA says their authority stems from legislative action in the late 1980s and early 90s. While talking to the OTA's attorney, Justice Dana Keene compared the agency's use of that authority to building a wagon over multiple decades.
From here on out, then the Turnpike Authority can issue as many bond series as they want for as many spurs as they want, because you've satisfied the front part of building the wagon and you don't have to follow the one issue for the back half?
That's exactly right, Your Honor.
That line of questioning by the justice bodes well for the protesters, according to a Norman City Council member.
Today showed that the judges agreed with us in part, and hopefully they will rule the same way, that you can't use vagueness in legislative statute to get your way.
There's no telling exactly when the Oklahoma Supreme Court will issue an opinion on this. An OTA spokesperson says the ruling will provide, quote, clarity and finality to their plans to build the new turnpikes. Barry Mangold, Oklahoma's Own, News 9.
The controversial turnpike expansion that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority has been pushing for is getting more pushback.
Of course, those in the path of the proposed project fear they will lose their homes and their property. Well, this morning, the Oklahoma Supreme Court heard arguments for and against the $5 billion proposed turnpike bond authorization.
News 4's Nick Camper was there at the hearing, and he joins us now. Nick?
The 2 main points brought up today were about financing and the direction of the turnpike expansion. OTA says that the state statute allows them and gives them the authority to expand where they need to, whereas the opposing attorney says the state law, the language of the law, will need to be changed in order for this to be fulfilled.
They have to bundle all 4 of these turnpikes together. And the OTA has tried to backtrack and say, well, we only had to do that the first time. But the statute doesn't say we only had to do that the first time.
Robert Norman is the lawyer for PIKE, the group that opposes the turnpike expansion. He argues that the money cannot be awarded to the authority because that's not how the law is written. Norman says in 2016 that money was approved because there were no challenges to the law.
If they don't go to the Supreme Court, they're going to have to deal with multiple lawsuits over their bond issue. So when they get that sense of determined opposition for whatever reason, I think they go to the courts.
In Monday's arguments, the Turnpike Authority says that the legislature gave them broad powers to fulfill this expansion and other toll road projects.
The authority is the sole entity to construct turnpikes at such locations and along such routes as it deems to be feasible and economically sound.
In a statement after the hearing, OTA says, we look forward to the court's ruling, which will provide clarity and finality to this issue. The attorney for PIKE says there is no way to know how the courts will rule.
Some of the justices ask questions where maybe one question you're going, hurrah, they're with us. And then the next question you're going, well, maybe not.
At the Capitol, Nick Camper, Oklahoma's News 4.
Now, and as we said, the opponents of the expansion argue families will lose their homes and their properties will be destroyed if the project is approved.
Currently, there's no date scheduled for the court's decision. We'll keep you posted.
The future of the OTA Turnpike expansion will be decided by Oklahoma Supreme Court. OU Nightly's Dana Searles is live with more. Dana?
The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority's plan for their expanded turnpike had oral arguments heard today at the Supreme Court of Oklahoma. I spoke with people from PIKE OTA who are against this expansion to hear their thoughts on the hearings today. The future of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority's Turnpike expansion plan is in the hands of the Supreme Court.
This was a great opportunity for us. We take it as a positive that they see and take the case seriously enough to have done it, and we feel like we did well today.
OTA is requesting permission from the court to issue $500 million in bonds to help fund the project. The state's high court heard arguments about the controversial issue earlier today.
I think all Oklahomans need to know that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority can right now build wherever, whenever, and whatever they want, no matter if the road is actually justified.
We firmly believe and have hopefully convinced the court that all three of these new turnpikes in Access Oklahoma are legally unauthorized, and hopefully that is the ruling we will get out of the court.
The ruling also considered the rest of the Access Oklahoma plan.
I was very encouraged by the questions by the justices and how that they were wanting to look at the text and that they were wanting to look at the text and make sure that the law is followed. And that's really all that the landowners wanted. It was for the law to be followed.
This plan would reconstruct and widen more than 100 miles while adding 53 miles of new routes by 2037, costing $5 billion.
To see the community come together and pool their resources to hire lawyers to show up at court and make sure that the law is followed, that is designed to protect them, is very encouraging. And I think the lawyers that showed up today on behalf of PIKE OTA they did an excellent job.
I do believe they have the right to take anyone's house. So our struggle is for everyone, and I really hope that people recognize that.
PIKE OTA says they will now focus their efforts towards the district hearings while they await the Supreme Court ruling. Reporting live, Dana Searles, OU Nightly.
A judge is expected to rule soon in a lawsuit that could make or break new turnpike plans in Oklahoma. More than 240 Cleveland County residents say the OTA violated state transparency laws before it announced the $5 billion Access Oklahoma plan. Residents have asked the court to invalidate certain OTA contracts while the agency is asking for the lawsuit to be thrown out. If neither request is granted, the case will go to trial in December. The Access Oklahoma plan is also up before the state Supreme Court. The court heard arguments earlier this week from the OTA and from protesters. We're now awaiting a decision in that case as well.
And we begin tonight here at 6 o'clock with explosive news on the plan to build more turnpikes through Cleveland County.
Within the last 90 minutes, a judge ruling the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority violated state transparency laws when it awarded contracts for its controversial $5 billion turnpike expansion plan.
Our own Barry Mangold, he has been following this now and joins us now live from Norman. Barry, this is a huge blow to the OTA's efforts.
Yeah, Carl, Lisa, this ruling effectively sends the OTA back to square one of planning the Access Oklahoma project. Special Judge Timothy Olson ruled that the OTA willfully violated the State Open Meeting Act, saying the agency did not adequately describe the project in meeting agendas before it was announced to the public earlier this year. Back in January and February, the OTA awarded a contract to an engineering firm to begin design work on the projects. Judge Olson has deemed that contract and any other action related to Access Oklahoma during those meetings as invalid. The judge went as far as saying the OTA's actions in question were the opposite of what is required by the State Open Meeting Act. The group of Cleveland County residents who filed this lawsuit say this is a big win for transparency in government. And now it is important to note that this ruling is separate from the Supreme Court case right now where the OTA is seeking authorization to build new turnpikes. We'll have more on this ruling, the OTA's reaction, and what's next for Access Oklahoma tonight at 10.
The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority's $5 billion plan that included building new turnpikes in Cleveland County is now upended.
A judge ruled the OTA willfully violated state transparency laws, sending the Access Oklahoma project back to square one. Our Barry Mangold has more on what's next.
The OTA's plan to build 3 new turnpikes, including one right here along Indian Hills Road, was halted by Thursday's ruling. Now the agency says it plans to redo contracts and other actions to get the plan back on track.
1, 2, 3.
A group that filed a lawsuit against the State Turnpike Authority celebrating Thursday after a judge ruled that the agency willfully violated transparency laws.
Hopefully it sends the right message to all state agencies, not just the OTA. But the citizens of this state need to be informed and advised of what's taking place that affects them on a daily basis.
Their lawsuit focused on OTA board meetings in January and February when the agency awarded millions in engineering contracts for the $5 billion Access Oklahoma plan. Judge Timothy Olson wrote, "There is no reference to the Access Oklahoma program in the agendas," adding that the agendas clearly do not comply with the Open Meetings Act. As a result, those contracts are invalid.
This is telling OTA, you did it wrong. Fix it and don't do it again.
Now the agency must redo those contracts. The OTA saying, quote, "We respect the court's decision and will go about bringing new items of business to correct what the court found to be deficient." A Norman city councilor says this time it will be different.
And guess what? We will show up and we will provide public comment.
The state Supreme Court is still considering whether the OTA has the authority to build the new turnpikes. That ruling could have more permanent implications on the future of Access Oklahoma. Barry Mangold, Oklahoma's Own, News 9.
The Access Oklahoma project has to start over.
A Cleveland County judge ruled this afternoon the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority violated the Open Meeting Act when they announced their $5 billion expansion plans. Fox 25's David Chazanoff spoke with both sides. So, David, how are attorneys and the OTA reacting tonight?
Dan and Wendy, the OTA tells me they respect the court's decision, but they wanted to let you know that they gave the public as much notice as possible about the Turnpike project. Now, the attorneys I spoke with, they're happy and excited about what this could mean for Oklahoma's future moving forward.
It's square zero from my perspective.
On Thursday, a Cleveland County judge ruled the OTA didn't give people enough notice about their 15-year Turnpike expansion project.
And there was a lot of secrecy that was involved in this whole thing. There were a number of people that knew, but not any of the residents whose property was impacted by this decision were given notice.
The OTA tells Fox 25 they first announced their plans at a board meeting on December 7th of 2021. And tried to, quote, publicize the announcement as much as possible.
That was totally inaccurate. We deposed 3 board members of the OTA, and none of the 3 told us that they had any knowledge about Access Oklahoma prior to February the 22nd.
The judge determined there was no reference to the Access Oklahoma project or any Kickapoo extension in any of the agendas for December 7th, 2021, January 25th, and February 22nd of this year.
There's no situation that we know of where a state agency can do this with this much power to affect my constituents' lives.
Court documents say that anything the OTA did at their January 25th or February 22nd meetings related to Access Oklahoma are invalid.
So if the Turnpike Authority wishes to attempt things again, they're going to have to do so correctly from the start with an opportunity for meaningful public notice and discourse.
And we have that full interview, the OTA's entire statement, as well as this 11-page court ruling on our website right now. That's okcfox.com. Reporting live in Oklahoma City, David Chazanoff, Fox 25 News.
This is Capital Insider, taking you inside politics, policy, and government in Oklahoma. I'm Dick Pryor with Quorum Call publisher Sean Ashley. Sean, let's start with the latest on the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority's $5 billion Access Oklahoma Turnpike project, which includes efforts to expand turnpikes in central Oklahoma. The Turnpike Authority's actions in approving the plan were challenged in Cleveland County District Court. What did the judge determine?
Seminole County District Judge Timothy Olson, who presided over the case, ruled Thursday that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority violated the Open Meeting Act twice in its posting of agenda items related to the Access Oklahoma Turnpike plan. Olson noted the Open Meeting Act requires agenda items to be plainly worded and directly state the purpose of the meeting, and that the Turnpike Authority knew the specifics of the plan in great detail. But he wrote, "The agendas for the January 25th and February 26th meetings contain nothing referencing the plan, Access Oklahoma, or the proposed routes as required by the Open Meeting Act." And he later added, "The OTA's violations meet the definition of willful."
Judge Olson held that the Turnpike Authority's actions in those meetings related to Access Oklahoma were invalid. So what should we be watching for next?
That's really up to the Turnpike Authority. It could accept the judge's decision and restart the approval process, or it could appeal the decision to the Oklahoma Supreme Court. Coincidentally, the Supreme Court heard challenges Monday to the Turnpike Authority's request for validation of the bond issue that will be used to finance the Turnpike projects. Much of the opponents' arguments focused on whether the authority has proper authorization from the legislature to build some of the turnpikes in the plan, particularly the east-west connector between Mustang and Norman and the southern extension from Purcell to I-40. The court has yet to rule in that case. The Turnpike Authority is scheduled to meet Tuesday, so perhaps we will get an indication then of how they plan to proceed.
A victory for those who oppose Access Oklahoma. They say 11 turnpikes in the state is more than enough, and in order for OTA to construct any more, they'll have to do so with the voices of the public in their ear.
We do want openness in government in the state of Oklahoma. A person of ordinary education and intelligence should be able to read the agenda and know precisely what is taking place at a meeting.
Around 250 plaintiffs sued Oklahoma's Turnpike Authority, claiming agendas from 2 meetings in early 2022 were not transparent to the public.
If there is a willful violation of the act, which the judge found that there was in this case, there is a statute that says any action taken in willful violation of the act is invalid.
That means OTA's January and February meetings, in which contracts were approved for nearly $69 million,
would invalidated a number of actions that were taken.
Just to make it clear, all of those contracts from the January and February meetings prior to the announcement of Access Oklahoma are now completely invalid.
Well, I think it certainly is going to have to be reevaluated, and they're going to have to do things appropriately by giving people proper notice through agendas that are compliant with the Open Meeting Act.
OTA sent KOCO this statement saying they respect the court's decision and plan to correct what the court found to be deficient.
The fight against the Norman Turnpike expansion scores a win, and tribal art goes on sale this weekend in Oklahoma City. All that ahead on the KOSU Daily. The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority loses the first of several impending court decisions regarding its access program. State Impact's Beth Wallace reports.
The lawsuit filed on behalf of over 200 Central Oklahoma residents alleged the OTA willfully violated the state's Open Meeting Act by using vague language in its agendas and public documents leading up to the announcement of the Access project. The decision invalidates the actions taken during the meetings in question, which amounts to about $69 million in engineering contracts for the project. Here's Norman City Councilor Rashard Tortorello, whose ward would be significantly impacted by the project.
This will force them to go back and redo those meetings, and guess what? We will show up and we will provide public comment.
There are 2 other court decisions that are expected to come out this month. One from a lawsuit challenging the OTA's interpretation of the law that authorizes some of the project's routes, and another in which the state Supreme Court will decide whether to validate bonds for the project. For State Impact, I'm Beth Wallace.
Now more news impacting Norman residents. Associate District Judge Timothy Olson ruled against the OTA in the controversial Turnpike expansion. OU Nightly's Tayo DeLuca is live with more.
Yeah, guys, it's back to square one for the Turnpike expansion. Yesterday, a judge in Seminole County ruled against the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority in a decision that voided all previously made contracts by the OTA.
I discovered, I think, via a Facebook post, that the Turnpike Authority was planning to put a highway right next to my house.
Tassie Hirschfield, a PIKE OTA volunteer and Norman resident, was one of many who found out via social media rather than from their government. Last night's ruling saying the OTA willingly violated the Open Meeting Act declared that can no longer be the case.
It's a big deal because if you are a state agency and you violate this law, the way the law is written, then, and this is what the judge did, it invalidates every action that was taken while the agency was in violation of the Open Meetings Act.
The OTA released a statement today stating, "We respect the court's decision and will go about bringing new items of business to correct what the court found to be deficient for the authority board's consideration." And now for the OTA, it's back to square zero.
So this case is, just screams of impropriety. I hope when the OTA undertakes its new endeavor to perhaps undertake Access Oklahoma, that those irregularities will be rectified. But the violation has occurred, the harm has been done, and there needs to be accountability for that.
This is far from the last time that the Turnpike expansion will be challenged in court, as several lawsuits are still in play. Reporting live here in Norman, Tyler DeLuca, OU Nightly.
Well, as we reported to you on News 4 Thursday, a big development in the ongoing Turnpike controversy. A lot of people do not want that project to go through because they feel like it's going to destroy their property and take their homes away from them, and some of them are definitely in the path of that project. They've been fighting it. Department of Transportation's been saying we've been open and above board on this, but a court in Norman said no, they violated the Open Meetings Act. So I know you both have been looking into this. What all does DOT now have to go back to the drawing board to start all this again?
Yes, I think. Stan Ward, I'm going to say his name again, folks. Stan Ward.
Attorney.
He's a prominent attorney in Norman.
That's an understatement.
And he's passionate about this project. It involved his own land and property. And he won. And you got Judge Timothy Olson in Cleveland County ruling on a summary judgment all in favor of the plaintiffs, Stan Ward and his people. And so I think it does take them back to February 22nd to redo everything they've already done. And,
so what we're saying is the folks fighting it won big in court.
With Stan Ward.
They won big, as Mike just said, on summary judgment. I mean, this is not even going to trial. This is just, at first glance by the judge. And Mike answered it, I think, well, pragmatically, you probably go back to the drawing board at the Turnpike Authority and the Department of Transportation. But legally, you could try to appeal that and go through the legal process, but you just have to make that decision. Well, what's going to be if you're at the Department of Transportation, if you're Secretary Gatz,
who we've had on the show,
what's going to be the quickest in their view to get this turnpike approved and starting a project? So we've had the Secretary on the show. We've had the leader, I can't remember her name, the leader of the No Turnpikes Here movement. That's not the correct name, but Pike Off. That's it.
That's good. That's
How
good.
Can you forget that name?
That's good.
We've had them both.
I got you.
That's why you got to watch Flashpoint, because we get both sides on this show and we inform the voters.
And they always say, folks, you can't fight City Hall. Well, I don't know.
Apparently they did.
You go get a lawyer like Stan Ward, and they did fight City Hall, so to speak, and they won on all counts so far.
They said they violated the Open Meetings Act.
Yeah.
Do we think there was any deliberate use to
I'm glad you asked
to
that.
get this thing rammed down the throats of everybody and
Mike,
make it happen?
Go ahead.
There are two sides here, Kev, as we just said. And I think both sides have real sincerity. The property owners are concerned about their property.
Yes.
Obviously, the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, the Department of Transportation, they are for expanding infrastructure and alleviating congestion in the lives of citizens.
On I-35.
That's what they do. So there's sincerity on both parts, and I really do not believe, knowing the men and women that have served on Turnpike Authority and Transportation, I don't think there was any shenanigans regarding the Open Meeting Act.
On the other hand, because it's Flashpoint, watch Stan Ward go to the district attorney and ask for possible prosecution, not putting people in jail, but if you violate the Open Meeting Act, it's a crime. And I'm not saying he'll do that, but he could go to the DA and say, hey, I want my pound of flesh. I think he'll probably be happy just getting the relief he's already gotten, and that's redo everything that's been done, and with more input from all the citizens that were impacted.
So basically what the allegation was on violating the Open Meetings Act was that they were trying to basically hide something before anybody caught wind of it. That's the allegation. But you brought it out that you don't think that's the case at all.
I don't. We're kind of out of time on the segment, but I don't think so. I think there's sincerity on both sides.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well put. Sincerity on both sides.
Well, the junior bug comes in the month of June. The lightning bug comes in May. Bed bug comes just any old time, but ain't not going to stay. Oh, there ain't no bugs on me. There ain't no bugs on me. There may be bugs on the rest of you mugs, but there ain't no bugs on me. Well, a bullfrog sitting on a lily pad, looking up at the sky. The lily pad broke and the frog fell in. He got water all in his eyeball. There ain't no bugs on me. There ain't no bugs on me. There may be bugs on some of you mugs, but there ain't no bugs on me. Get away, you horsefly. Mosquito, he fly high. Mosquito, he fly low. The old mosquito lands on me. Well, he ain't gonna fly no more. Oh, there ain't no bugs on me. There ain't no bugs on me. There may be bugs on the rest of you mugs, but there ain't no bugs on me. Sitting on a railroad track, his heart was all aflutter. Along come a choo-choo on the track, toot-toot peanut butter. Oh, there ain't no bugs on me. Oh, there ain't no bugs on me. Girls, there may be bugs on some of you mugs, but there ain't no bugs on me. To bite them, littler bugs are still littler bugs, and so ad infinitum. Oh, ain't no bugs on me. There ain't no bugs on me. There may be bugs on the rest of you mugs, but there ain't no bugs on me. As I went walking through the woods, humming a tune so gaily, the wind come whistling through the trees and froze my ukulele. Oh, there ain't no bugs on me. There ain't no bugs on me. There may be bugs on some of you mugs, but there ain't no bugs on me. Oh, there ain't no flies on me. There ain't no flies on me. There may be flies on some of you guys, but there ain't no flies on me. Oh, there ain't no lobsters on me. There ain't no lobsters on me. There may be lobsters on some of you mobsters, but there ain't no lobsters on me. Oh, it ain't gonna rain no more, no more. It ain't gonna rain no more. How in the heck can I wash my neck when it ain't gonna rain no more? Oh, it ain't gonna rain no more, no more. Ain't gonna rain no more. How in the hell can the old folks tell it ain't gonna rain no more? Oh, there ain't no bugs on me. There ain't no bugs on me. Girls, there may be bugs on some of you mugs, but there ain't no bugs on me.